My name is Chris. I'm ex-Canadian Army. This happened in Afghanistan, Operation Athena, the Canadian contingent to ISAF. It was during winter, late 2000s, Kandahar province. Our company group, comprised of mechanized infantry mounted in LAV 3s and some Leopard tanks, engineers, combat service support, we deployed for a 4 or 5 day operation to sweep some villages along the Kandahar River. On the first night, we halted in the middle of the riverbed, which was dry at this time of the year. It's about a half a kilometer wide, so if you park in the middle of it, you'd get a clear view for a couple hundred meters on either side, making it impossible for any bad guys to sneak up on you in the night. For these kinds of overnight halts, we'd stop in a big circle with the fighting vehicles, tanks and LAV 3s, around the perimeter, facing out, while the support vehicles parked in the middle. The vehicles on the perimeter would take turns being up, providing security for their part of the ring. Picture 20 vehicles in a circle, with the ones at 12, 3, 6, and 9 o'clock being up, meaning their crews are awake, slewing their turrets, scanning their thermal imagers, and covering their sectors. Then, after an hour, the next vehicle to the right of each of those takes over and relieves the previous vehicle, and so forth throughout the night. You do this, of course, so that everyone can get some sleep, but also provide constant security against enemy attacks. After we formed our perimeter, got the dismounts out, and started settling in for the night, the shift schedule came over the radio, informing us that we had the second shift scheduled to start in an hour, and another 1 or 2 shifts later in the night. The back of one of these LAVs is basically a big open compartment with benches on either side that the infantry dismount sits on. But the infantry guys are now sleeping in a shallow ditch behind the LAV, so the gunner and the crew commander, which is me, got to sleep inside on those benches. Better than sleeping in the dirt, I suppose. The driver sleeps in his station up front. Since we had to be up in an hour, for security watch anyway, the gunner, driver, and I decided to just lay awake in our sleeping bags, reading, watching movies, and playing PSP respectively until it was time for our shift. About a half an hour before our shift started, we heard and felt the distinct sounds and movements of someone climbing up onto the LAV. It's a heavy vehicle, but you still know when someone's climbing onto it. And in that scenario, it probably means someone's coming to wake you up and make you do something. So the gunner and I, laying across from each other, we look at each other, we sit up, give a collective sigh, bracing for one of the hatches above our heads to pop open and to start being told what to do by some sergeant. But nothing happened. It just went quiet. I was confused. We would have heard and felt if they had climbed or jumped off the LAV. I stood up and opened the hatch above the bench so I could pop my head out and see what was going on. There was nobody on top of the LAV that I could see, but the LAV has a big turret, and I figured maybe whoever it was went to the driver's hatch up front and was talking to him. So I climbed right out of my hatch, got up on top of the LAV, then climbed on top of the turret to look towards the driver's hatch. And there was still nobody in sight, and nowhere for anyone to hide. Now I'm really perplexed. From on top of the turret, I can see all the ground between me and the flanking vehicles. I can see where the troops are sleeping. I can see the support vehicles in the center of the ring, and I have a clear view of the riverbed for hundreds of meters. There isn't a single soul moving around anywhere. And at this point, I go from perplexed to concerned. We are in hostile territory after all, and having unknown persons crawling on your LAV in the dead of night is a bad thing. I get back in and explain the situation to the other 2 guys and instruct them to lock all the hatches from the inside since we apparently can't account for who or what is crawling on our LAV. From there, we just waited for our shift to start, performed it as usual, and went back to bed. We heard no other mysterious people or things crawling on top of the LAV. But the next day, our driver told us something crazy. That next morning, our company group moved to the first village we were sweeping, so we dismounted our infantry and then provided overwatch with our turret. As soon as things quieted down on the radio, the driver got on the intercom and told us something else happened later that night. He said that at some point between shifts, he decided he couldn't sleep and started watching movies on his laptop. As he was zoning out, all of a sudden, he felt a hand on the back of his head that brushed forward over the top, running fingers through his hair. He whipped his head around, expecting to see one of us had crawled past the turret to mess with him, but nobody was there. The gunner and I did not believe him at first. We thought maybe he was trying to scare us by adding to the weird experience we had earlier that night. But after a while, it became clear he was being dead serious. He was genuinely creeped out. In the days that followed, we became convinced that something supernatural was going on with that LAV. We debated trying to investigate whether any of the previous occupants of that LAV had been killed. These vehicles stay in Afghanistan for the entire occupation, and they're handed from outgoing troops to incoming troops when the tour rotations happen. We decided, however, that we probably just didn't want to know, and we're better off just ignoring it. Nothing else happened for the rest of the tour, either in that LAV or anywhere else in our company, at least that I know of.